Okay, let's talk about Maison Blanche origins and specifically A. Schwartz and Son, Abraham Schwartz's business. Abraham, of course, is or was the father of Simon Schwartz, S.J. Schwartz, who is the founder of Maison Blanche. So Simon, of course, was working for his daddy before he moved down the street and opened his own place. And that's a complicated story that we'll need a part two for. But for the moment, let's talk about how the family business began. And that, of course, begins with Abraham. So A. Schwartz and Son is where we're going to start with this bit of an origin story for Maison Blanche. I'm Edward Brandley, your NOLA history guy, at NOLA history guy on all the social media, and of course, www.nolahistoryguy.com. So here we go. Let's talk about A. Schwartz and Son. So who was Abraham Schwartz? We'll give you a little bit of background on the guy. Then we'll talk about his, part of that, we'll talk about his partnership with Charles Kaufman, uh, the store that they open and operate on Charter Street, basically around the corner in the first block of Charters off Canal. Their move from that store to the big street to Canal and Baronne on either side of Canal Street. We'll talk about that, and then the move of A. Schwartz and Son down to the 701 block in the Touro Buildings, and we'll stop there for this episode and continue on with the Touro Buildings in a part two. So Abraham Schwartz, the patriarch of the family that leads to the beginning of Maison Blanche. Abraham was born in 1820 in the Rhineland. He leaves Germany and moves to Liberty, Mississippi. You figure he's in the area of 20 years old in the in his 20s and in the 1840s, and at that point, the Rhineland is part of the the original Holy Roman Empire, and then at the end of the under Bonaparte, the what was the Holy Roman Empire becomes what Bonaparte calls, of course, the Confederation of the Rhine, and becomes part of the greater French Empire under Napoleon. The whole area by the 1840s, you've got just all sorts of political turmoil and revolution and just general upheaval in Germany. Because, when we say Germany, it's not really Germany. It's that big, massive collection of electorates and principalities and duchies and everything else. Basically, you've got France and Prussia and the Confederation of the Rhine in between. So it's a mess. And of course, being Jewish, that adds a little bit to it. He decides to pack up and leave. He ends up in Liberty, Mississippi, moves to New Orleans, and when he gets to New Orleans, of course, one of the things that Jewish folks do, as you know, they come Jewish immigrants from Western Europe. They make the connection. They go to shul, they go to temple, and they meet the community and they start working in the community. So that's what Abraham does. Of course, he meets other people. He marries Julia Kaufman, who is the sister of Simon Kaufman and Charles Kaufman, in 1850. Now, was that a business arrangement? I mean, he by now Abraham's been there a while, and he's obviously clearly demonstrated that he's a savvy businessman. So yeah, he is. I don't know if this is kind of an arranged or a business marriage, or if there was romance there. I guess I'll have to dig more on that at some point, or if anybody's related to the Kaufmans and knows more of the personal story, somebody let me know. So anyway, so this is 1850. So he's 30 years old. He marries Julia Kaufman. So he marries into what is an established Jewish retail family in New Orleans. That's the Kaufmans. So he goes into business with his brother-in-law Simon in 1858. So he's working for various folks for a while there as now a dutiful Jewish retailer and husband. He talks to his brother-in-law and they say, we're going to open a store. Charles comes to work for Simon and for Abraham Shwartz, but he breaks with the Kaufmans in 1868. This is the Robinson Atlas uh, of 1888 or 1883, sorry, but the buildings don't really change that much. So I wanted you to see where the store was. And if you look in that bottom section of this zoom in on, this is the second district plate, the French Quarter plate from the Robinson Atlas. All of that stuff on the left-hand side, that's Canal Street. All those dotted lines, that's the streetcar tracks that existed in 1883. Some of them you can see are going up to a turntable, and they're going up right there. That's the street there is that's the three-way intersection, and you can see the bottom of the big circular Clay monument, Henry Clay monument there. So it's Royal Street on the right and St. Charles Street on the left, Canal Street on either side. You see the center of the map shows you Exchange Place, that's Exchange Alley, which was between Royal on the top and Charters on the bottom. And yeah, I love that story. I'm telling that story a lot on my French Quarter walking tour lately, so it's fun. So the bottom map, that block that says 33, that's the first block of Charters off of Canal. And you can see this is the old addressing, and we're going to have to do a pod. Just shout out to I won't mention names because I didn't want to go there, but shout out to a friend of mine who I just explained the old addressing system to, who didn't really remember how that worked and everything. So basically, this is the old system. You'll see that the first building there is 93 Canal Street, which is facing Canal, and then you've got 5 Charters, 7 Charters, etc. So if you go over to where that handwritten number says 25 at the bottom of the map, and it says Carpets, that's the building that was Schwartz Kaufman and Company in the 1860s. So of course by now it's a carpet store because this map is 1883, but I wanted you to visualize that so you can see where these guys started. So they start there on Charters, basically half a block in from Canal Street. They're quite successful. They do well for themselves there. You can see that's the to kind of again document where the store was and that kind of thing. You see that's the Gardner City Directory, and that's their entry there. Schwartz Kaufman and Company, A. Schwartz, Simon Kaufman, and I don't know who FS Block is. Wholesale dry goods at 25 Charters Street. And you can see they also had a second location at 130 Rampart Street. So that's going to be at the other end of the French Quarter. But 25 Charters, of course, is where the whole thing gets started. So fast forward now again, so that's the 1861. They got the store rolling. They're selling dry goods there. They've moved around a little bit over time. Well, no, take it back. They haven't moved at all yet. That's my bad. But the business breaks up, and that's mainly because Charles Kaufman wants to go. Now, remember, Charles, you'll notice he's not listed as a partner or in a shareholder in the firm of Schwartz Kaufman and Company. So Charles wants to go and open his own store, and that's Charles Kaufman is the Kaufmans that when we talk about the Dryades Street corridor and all of the Kaufman stores that build out from there, that's all Charles Kaufman. So basically at this point, though, Abraham Shwartz is breaking up with his brother-in-law, so they're going off into their own businesses at that point. You'll see the notice of dissolution there, July 1st, 1868. They're breaking up this band, and they're going to see two bands form. You see A. Schwartz, S. Kaufman, and then you see that second Schwartz name there, Isaac Schwartz. That's the son in Abraham Shwartz, A. Schwartz, and son. That's A. Schwartz's oldest, his firstborn, Nathan Isaac Schwartz. So he was brought into the business at some point before its dissolution. So Schwartz Kaufman Company breaks up in 1868. The store continues at 25 Charters for a few years, becomes just the Kaufmans go off and they do their own thing, more up in originally up in the area of the Poydras market, up on Poydras Street. They've opened a couple of stores off Carondelet and off Baronne on near Poydras, but Abraham is here now in still at 25 Charters, which is about that's 115 Charters in block addressing as we're going. So he opens up with his son, A. Schwartz and Son. They keep going on Charters until 1874, where they make the move to the big street. They make their move to Canal Street. And so they go into the 900 block of Canal Street in the Pelican Building, which is Canal and Baronne, in 1874. Now, the Pelican Building is sold and becomes the name that we are usually most familiar with for that building at 900 Canal, and that is the Chess, Checkers, and Whist Club. So that's basically that's where the store begins. Actually, the store continues, but its first location on Canal Street is what was originally the Pelican Building and is now the Chess, Checkers, and Whist Club. A side note, well, we'll talk about that in a sec. So basically, the Chess, Checkers, and Whist Club, there's obviously new ownership and everything. Abraham moves the store across the street to 161 Canal. So he starts at 900 Canal in the Pelican Building, and he goes basically down half a block and across the street to the French Quarter side in what is now 161 Canal on the Robinson Atlas, and you see an advertising because we're still in the old numbers. So that's 161, as in 160 addresses up from the river. But that's the 801 block now, where Homes and the stores that we are familiar with in the 800 block are. He is in one of those buildings there. So that's basically that is the building, Chess, Checkers, and Whist. This is all 1882 or so. So at that point, Abraham gets the opportunity to move to basically what is Jewish Retailing Central, and that, of course, is the Touro Buildings in the 701 block, what's now the Astor Hotel. The Touro Buildings, of course, Judah Touro builds out the entire 701 block as a series of 4-story row houses that the bottom first and second floors of most of them were retailers. So he gets the opportunity to move into 133 Canal, which is one of the smaller row houses in the 701 block, but he moves there. So that's 133 Canal, which is in the Touro Buildings in the 701 block, so 700 block French Quarter side. He almost immediately acquires Danziger's at that point, so that he gets 133 and 131, so he can put the two together into a larger store. Now, here's a photo. This is from the 1880s of this is 160 to 162 Canal Street, which is essentially the 900. This is 900 Canal. So this is the Pelican building at the time. Now, there's a number of tenants in the Pelican building, one of whom is A. Shwartz. He doesn't rent the whole building. If he could rent the whole building, he'd have taken it, believe me. But the store was just not that big. So this is a shot of the Pelican building from the 1880s. It's morphed into the Chess, Checkers, and Whist Club at the time. So this building is, you can see, it's quite, should be quite familiar to you. It becomes a number of different things over time, because the Chess, Checkers, and Whist Club, the interior, there's a serious fire inside the club in the early 1900s that pretty much messes up the building, requires a lot of renovation. It never goes back to its original prestige because of that. By the 1930s, the building is demolished, and Walgreens takes advantage of, basically takes advantage of the fact that the building was for sale real cheap, demolishes it, and opens what is now the Walgreens store at 900 Canal. It's been there since 1938. So here's, again, on the old addressing, 160 Canal, which is now 900 Canal, which is still to this day the Walgreens. So here we go. We can see now advertising from A. Shwartz and Son in 1876. So what's happened, of course, is in 1868, Schwartz Kaufman dissolves. The Schwartz and his son Nathan Isaac take over 25 charters. Eventually, they move back. They move onto Canal Street, and you can see the advertising here: 160 and 162 Canal in Pelican House, and you can see there. And there's also a store that we'll get to at Ursuline and Decatur in what's called the Blue Stork building, but that's French Quarter. That's a separate dry goods store that was the location was almost used more as a warehouse to front the smaller retail space that was on Canal, but obviously was more popular. So here's advertising from 1876, 1878, telling you to go to Pelican House, which was the Pelican building, which is Canal Corner, Baronne. So the Pelican House, the Pelican building, gets sold to the folks who open the Chess, Checkers, and Whist Club. So that means that Abraham has to find another location. So he moves across the street and down a block into the 800 block, and he moves to 161 Canal. Now, it's kind of hard. Just pause this thing and take a look. You can see D.H. Holmes. That's the 4-story building on the right-hand side of this old photo from 1875. And 161 Canal is 3 buildings over. So you can see the D.H. Holmes sign on the right, and then there's a very light-colored building next to it. And then there's a building where you can see some really nice cast iron gallery on the second floor with a little bit darker brick. Abraham A. Shwartz and Son moves into the building next to that. So they're kind of mid-block at that point in the 800 block. Now, this is 1875. So you follow it down, follow those chimneys, because those are basically row houses that are the same height, the same built in the same time frame. And then you move down to the corner. That's going to be Canal. So this is basically the 800 block starts at Canal and Bourbon, and it goes up the street to Canal and Dauphine. And then you see the spire, and it's a little bit washed out. I did a little bit, but it wasn't that important to the story. But that's the third incarnation of Christ Episcopal. So remember, Christ Episcopal starts in the quarter. They move to the 700 block of Canal, 701 block of Canal with their beautiful Greek Revival church. Judah Touro buys them out. They build the Gothic church that you see here. And by 1884, they auction that off, and that becomes the Mercier building, which is the first location of of Simon Schwartz, Abraham's son's store, and the first location of Maison Blanche. Here in this, that's not till 1884, though, for the Mercier building. So you can see Christ Episcopal is still there. This is a neat photo. I just wish it wasn't. I need to find a better version or a better scan of this photo because it's a good period shot. You can see the hack carriages, the taxi carriages on the side. You can see a mule-drawn Stevenson bobtail streetcar because that's all of the streetcars were have been running on Canal or on the back of town lines off of Canal since 1861. You can see the exposure was a bit long, so that the moving streetcar is a bit fuzzy there. But anyway, so if you look at homes and go 1, 2, 3 buildings to the left, that is A. Schwartz and Son. Then after the move from across the street at the Pelican building, the Chess, Checkers, and Whist Club, over here now to what is the 801 block, 161 Canal in the older naming. Here's a Sanborn map from that time. You can see D.H. Holmes is starting to expand out a little bit more, curving around behind 153. Eventually, Daniel Henry buys all of that stuff that's all the way to the back for his store. So you see 155 there in the center of the block. That's D.H. Holmes. And then if you come down, if you keep going, I should say up to the left, you see 157, 159, and then 161. That was A. Schwartz and Son. This is a Sanborn fire insurance map. So, but again, it's dated. This is dated prior. This is an 1891 Sanborns, so they still are working with the old address scheme that doesn't kick in until 1895. Advertising from 161 Canal. You see 1880 advertising here. Schwartz's. I'm going to Schwartz's. So what is that? That's A. Schwartz and Son. But I'm going to Schwartz's because you're going to see Mr. Abraham. He's at this point he was the patriarch all the way till he passes in 1892, and it's very much a dry goods store. That becomes an interesting point of contention later between Nathan and his younger brother Simon, which is why Simon ends up opening his own place, because Simon's got bigger visions, and that's how we get to Maison Blanche, but we're talking about the origins here. So you can see by 1880s, seasonable goods. We're advertising here in the winter, November, December, 1880. So we see, his winter goods are coming out, selling the coats, that kind of thing. Dry goods, of course, is, ladies' underwear down at the bottom there. You kind of get the idea there. So this is all the stuff that you would go when you were going down to Canal Street. To get to Canal at this point, that's that mule-drawn streetcar that you see there. Remember, this is 1880, and Canal Street, the Canal streetcar line doesn't electrify until 1895. That's when we start really seeing things kick in. The store would be gaslit at this point. Commercial electrification begins in the 1880s. So when you start seeing pictures of downtown of these blocks in the mid 1880s is when you start seeing the moonlight towers, the big competition to the Edison bulb for street illumination, and then of course commercial electrification and lighting up the stores. By 1884, they're moving to the Touro Buildings. So we see a move now that A. Shwartz and Son at 161 Canal, just again, a few doors down from D.H. Homes, they're moving out because that's typical of a change of location, is that you're going to dump everything you've got to minimize the transfer, even though you're in the 800 block and you're just going literally a block down to the 700, but no better time to let's dump the old inventory and then bring in all kind of new stuff for the grand opening in the new location. So this is the 1st of June, 1884. It's only a couple of months before that Christ Episcopal Church is, it's sold and demolished, and that becomes the Mercier building. So what's happening now is Abraham is moving his store into the hub of Jewish retailing, and one of the big hubs of small shops on Canal Street, and that's the Touro Buildings in the 701 block. So they're leaving 161 Canal, they're leaving the 800 block or the 801 block and moving into the 701 block. And yes, please call early, consult your own interests, make your savings. Everything's been reduced because we don't want to move it down the street. Here's a shot of the Touro Buildings. This is a Blessing stereo shot from the Touro Buildings in 1880. Just a side note, I was touring the 1850 House Museum, and I never noticed this, and nobody pointed, well, because it's a self-guided tour, but talking to the docents and everything on Friday, they have a stereoptic projector in the house. And usually you looked at the stereo card, think GAF Viewmaster, that kind of thing. There were handheld ones that you had to put up like next to a candle or something like that, but then they were big desktop versions. And they've got one of those at the 1850 house, which made me very, very happy because these stereo cards were really sturdy. Unfortunately, because they were printed on cardstock to look at with the 3D viewer, sometimes they don't scan as well. But here are the Touro Buildings. Basically around 1880, and this is the block that Judah Touro built out. So you can see it's a series of row houses. The left-hand side of this shot is that side of the block is Bourbon. You're at the Royal Street side, and this is the massive Henry Clay Monument at Royal. So the photographer here is standing on the St. Charles Street side, looking more or less at the building, and just out of frame on the right is Royal Street. So Abraham moves the store from 161 Canal here into 133 Canal, which is one of the stores or one of the row houses here in the Touro Buildings. So here's a Sanborn map from 1876 showing the 701 block of Canal. Again, just like that photo, Bourbon on the left, Royal on the right. So we're looking for 133 and 131, and you see them there in the middle where it says iron shutters, and the word shutters spans 133 and 131. So Abraham gets one of them. He jumps on when Danziger's goes out of business. He jumps on the store next door, so then he can combine the two into a single store for A. Shwartz and Son. Here's the ad then. Remember, that was June. They were having the removal sale. Now here's the grand opening of our new store at 133 Canal in the Touro Buildings. And you can see all new stuff, fall wraps, suits and underwear. We're all the way back again to getting ready for the cooler weather, October 1st, 1884. So he's got his grand opening at the same time the Mercier building is opening up, and Leon Feldman is moving out of the Touro Buildings down into the Mercier building, but his brother Bernard is staying. The 701 block is still, just all full of really, really solid retailing and shops. So that's 1884. By 1886, Danziger's is going out of business. This is the store next door to A. Shwartz and Son. So in January of 1886, you see that Danziger's is in the middle of their close. They get through Christmas, and then they announce they're closing the store. You can see here's an ad for their closing. So this isn't simply a removal, but they're shutting down completely at that point. By now, of course, Abraham has jumped on getting the slot next door, just like any smart retailer would. Here's an ad now for October of 1886. The store Danziger's is closed. It's about to they're about to get the renovations done to put 133 and 131 together. So you can see attractive autumnal arrays. They're in business, they're rolling along, and here's all the really cool stuff we've got. And you see the big thing here. Here's the note on the bottom to give you an idea of the progression of the store. A. Shwartz and Son, 133 Canal Street, soon to be 131 and 133 to have the bigger. And that's October of 1886. Okay, so we've come from Schwartz Kaufman. Well, we've come from Abraham coming to America, marrying into the Kaufman family, opening up a business with the Kaufman brothers over on Charters, extending that business after the Kaufmans and Abraham go their separate ways. He goes from Charters Street to the CBD side of Canal Street, to the French Quarter side of Canal Street in the 800 block by Holmes, and then lands in the 701 block in the Touro Buildings, and now by 1886 is expanding to those two slots in the 701 block. We need to stop there because we get into a couple of things. In particular, this is where we at this point we would start talking about Simon Schwartz, the younger son, splitting with his dad Abraham and his older brother Nathan. And Simon, of course, goes up the street, I should say, to the Mercier building, and that's where things start getting more interesting. Because of the fire in 1892 in the 700 block. There's enough for a whole nother, basically a continuation of this. So this is a good stopping point to show you the origins of how A. Shwartz and Son gets to the Touro Buildings, and then from here, how the Schwartzes get to the 901 block, and that's where, of course, Maison Blanche ends up. Greetings from NOLA, back to greetingstour.com. Shout out to these folks because I just love this mural. These folks, basically, they loaded themselves into an RV and went around the country and painted murals in the style of the old Kirk-type postcards. If you like this stuff, go out to greetingstour.com or go to Greetings Tour on Instagram, and you'll just love their stuff. A word from your sponsor. Buy my books. The brothers book. Sorry, Brother Martin baseball. I was sad to see the team lose in the playoffs in state championship, but I still love you guys and all of that kind of stuff. My first book there, of course, the Canal Streetcar book. The origins of there's 901 Canal and the MB building that Simon built, along with the jazz book and legendary locals. All of this Jewish retail stuff I started compiling all kind of things with the different familial connections and everything else. We're talking about the Kaufmans and the Schwartzes, We'll get into the Fellmans and the Krauses on another day. But in the meantime, go buy the Krause book. Krause, the New Orleans Value Store, tells the whole story. Again, I am at NOLA History Guy on social media, Edward at NOLAHistoryGuy.com. If you want to email me, always willing to talk to you about this stuff. Shout out to the folks that made this great parchment PowerPoint template and had were generous enough to put it into the comments.